everybody to the International Museum of Dinnerware Design's Unforgettable Dinnerware Lecture Series, Zoom series, and we've lost track actually of how many we've had. We want to thank the Ann Arbor District Library for hosting the event this evening. And before I introduce our speaker this evening, I want to give two plugs. One is, and I've already lost it. Oh, I see a number of people who've attended this because of Scott Vermillion this evening. So some of you haven't renewed your memberships recently, and we need your memberships in order to put on our programming, not this programming, but some of our other programming and exhibitions. So join us and get the menu in the mail where we list your name, which you can't read here. We list your name and the friends that support the museum. It's really integral to our support. And this is our last in the series for this spring, and then we'll take a couple of months off and you can all enjoy vacation and whatever you're doing. And then in the fall on September 13th, we resume the Zoom presentations, and the speaker in the fall is going to be Julie Gaines. And you may know Julie because she's one of the co-founders of Fish's Eddy in New York City, the big restaurantware shop that you can't miss. It's over near the Flatiron building. And she's going to be talking about their own museum, and our museum and her museum are joining forces to make an even better museum. And Julie's going to give a tour of the Fish's Eddy Restaurantware Museum, which includes amazing things I've never seen before: stencil pattern books, and decal pattern books, and stencils that are metal, and for what am I thinking? Airbrushing. Oh yeah, airbrushing, decorations, just incredible things that she has in her collection, and you won't want to miss that. So on September 13th, if you're already getting our emails and notifications about these Zoom events, you'll get the ones for the fall. They'll be on our website. And we have lots of things happening this summer, but it isn't going to be giving these specific Zoom presentations. So my introduction of Scott this evening is going to be relatively short because I think many of you have joined because you know of him. He's a wonderful industrial designer. He also has amazing collections of everything Art Deco and Mid-Century Modern and everything, if there's an in-between, everything else. So I'm going to turn it over to Scott at this moment and thank him very much for his presentation. We will take questions and answers at the end of Scott's talk, and we're not cutting him off because we started a moment late. But so if you have questions, you can put them in the chat, and my husband, Bill Walker, will relay those questions to Scott at the end of his presentation. You can also raise your hands at that time, but thank you to the Ann Arbor District Library for hosting this event this evening. And Scott, I'm turning it over to you. Welcome, Scott Vermillion.
Thank you, Margaret. I'm delighted to be able to do this today. I love sharing my collection with people who are interested, so it's really a thrill. I'm going to today tell everybody my story about how I got started as a collector of vintage dinnerware, and how my main focus in it is the designers and the history and the process behind the dinnerware that I love. And at the same time, I'm going to give you an abbreviated tour of my collection. This is just the tip of the iceberg. It's going to seem like a lot, but this is just an edited version of what I have. So I'm going to turn the screen over to my presentation, and we'll get started. Okay. So my collecting story starts with where I was born. I grew up in the house that my grandparents purchased in 1935 when they got married. And sadly, my grandmother passed away in the early 50s. And my grandfather and mother lived in the house until my mother got married. And when my parents got married, they got the house. And so I grew up in a house where the attics were filled with all sorts of things from when my grandmother lived there. And my bedroom was right off one of the attics. And I used to love to go into the attic, and I was fascinated by all the old things in there. And I used to pull things out of the attic and decorate my bedroom with it. And I was also lucky to live next to our family's farm, which dated back to the 1850s, and this is in suburban Chicago. So the farm property was just a couple blocks from where we lived, and there was the farmhouse, and there was a barn and chicken coop and farm buildings, and my grandfather collected threshing machines and farm equipment. And there was even a junkyard filled with old cars on the property. So we used to love to play in those cars when we were growing up. So that really influenced me as somebody who appreciated history. Also, even the house, the exterior didn't look like much, but the interior was, the way it was designed, there was almost an open floor plan like Frank Lloyd Wright designed. The walls only went up partially. So 3 rooms had this open floor plan. And I really appreciated vintage architecture when I was a kid too. So, and I wanted to be an architect. Another thing about my grandparents' house was the kitchen and the dining room was filled with these glass cabinets. And so I used to love to look at the glassware and dinnerware my grandmother had. And she, you see those doilies in there, and she had all sorts of dinnerware and glassware and kitsch items like salt and pepper shakers and canister sets and all sorts of things. And one of my favorite memories was every day my Aunt Julia who lived next door, would come over to my grandmother's house, and they would have a coffee klatch, and they'd gossip, drinking their Taster's Choice coffee and having coffee cake. And it was just fun to sit in and listen to them talk about things. The Fiesta piece is one piece I've gotten from my grandmother that I just happen to have. Most of the things are long gone, but I do have the piece of Fiesta from her dish cabinets. So when I started collecting as a boy, literally, and as I became a teenager and could drive, I'd go to flea markets and garage sales and that type of thing. And I was interested in mainly Art Deco and mid-century modern 50s, things from the 50s. And I really avoided dinnerware. I always used to go to flea markets with my friends and really comment like, I'm so glad I don't collect dinnerware because I can just buzz by tables that have that stuff. I just wasn't interested in it. But I was interested in vintage cars. And when I turned 16 and learned how to drive, I bought a 41 Studebaker from my uncle. Not too long after that, I bought that 56 Buick that I'm showing there. And so I love to collect things that were related to autos. Those banners are something I bought when I was 16 years old, and I still have them today. The black wheel cover is from my grandmother's 1934 Pontiac. That's something I pulled out of the attic of the house. They had saved that from my grandmother's car. So I just loved collecting all these things. And then I mentioned I loved architecture. So when I went to college, I went to Illinois Institute of Technology, their School of Architecture. And the first day I started classes, there was an exhibit from the Institute of Design was in the basement of Crown Hall. And they had an exhibit on product design. And I didn't even know what product design was, but the minute I saw their display, I threw out the idea of wanting to become an architect, and I wanted to become a product designer. And so I went through the architecture program for 1 year, and then I transferred to design and graduated as a product and graphic designer. And my first job was at Goldsmith Yamasaki Spec, which was a premier product design firm in Chicago. And there I am on the right as a young designer, working on probably some project for Elger Plumbing Ware. Or we had a lot of great clients. We had AT&T and RCA and 3M, Johnson Outboard Marine, many clients. But it was a great place to work. My boss on the right there, he actually started his career by working for Russell Wright the first year of his, when he lived in New York. And there were quite a few designers that worked at Goldsmith that collected Russell Wright pottery, but I wasn't into pottery or dinnerware. So I kind of ignored all that. I listened, but I wasn't that interested in collecting it. But I was interested in the history of the company. The company was actually an offshoot of Dave Chapman's design office. And Dave Chapman was one of the pioneers of industrial design in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. And he was honored along with Russell Wright and Frederick Burton Reed and Henry Dreyfuss and Raymond Loewy on a set of stamps that the post office issued in 2011. So I love the fact that the company I worked for had a long history in product design. So I used to go to thrift stores and estate sales and garage sales and always looking for Art Deco and things from the 50s. And I went to an estate sale and I saw this dinnerware set there. And I looked at it because it was Art Deco and I kind of liked it, but I was also just like, I don't want to collect dinnerware. So I left it there. And a couple days later, I went to a thrift store that was near that estate sale. And this dinnerware set was at the thrift store. So it obviously hadn't sold at the estate sale, and they donated it to the thrift store. And then it was about a quarter of the price. And I looked at it again and I'm like, you know what? This dinnerware is kind of following me. I should just buy it. So this was my first set of vintage dinnerware. And when I did a little research, this dinnerware is unmarked. Did a little research and discovered that this was made by Homer Laughlin and was their Riviera dinnerware, and was designed by Frederick Burton Reed. So I was intrigued by that, but I also love things from the 50s. So I wanted to expand my knowledge of dinnerware design. So I started building a library of books, this is all pre-internet, so you couldn't go online and figure out what was what. So you had to really build a library of books and brochures. I subscribed to a newsletter called the Pottery Collectors Express that would arrive on a Friday, and you just hope that you got your issue in time so you could be the first person to call to buy a piece of dinnerware. The Days was a publication on pottery and dinnerware that was published. And I started going to sales like APEC, which was in Springfield, Illinois, once a year. APEC stood for pottery, earthenware in China, American pottery, earthenware in China. And I met a lot of people who were very passionate about dinnerware collecting. So I started building my knowledge about the dinnerware, the designers who designed it, and kind of the history behind vintage dinnerware. So I had my set of Art Deco dinnerware and I wanted to collect something from the 50s. And in the 80s, although it's highly rare now, in the 80s, Starburst was everywhere when you went to flea markets and such. So I decided Franciscan Starburst was the dinnerware that I wanted to collect from the 50s. So I started collecting that dinnerware. And it was a lot less expensive to buy back then than it is today, but I collected quite a big set of it. And in 1985, I met my future husband, Scott. And the first day I went to his house, he showed me his kitchen and his pantry was filled with Starburst. And he told me that was the dinnerware that his parents got when they got married in 1954. And then he proceeded to tell me that he was planning on getting rid of it because he wanted a new set of dinnerware, which I promptly told him, no, you're not going to get rid of it. So 5 years later, when we moved in together, we combined our sets of Starburst, and that today is still our everyday set of dinnerware. We use Starburst every day, so we have a large collection of it. But as I started getting more interested in dinnerware, I decided to start collecting Oasis, which was a blue variation on the same shape. It was made by Franciscan, and Oasis and Starburst were designed by George James. The shape was designed by George James, and the patterns were designed by Mary Brown. And I remember I was so proud. I had all my Oasis and all my Starburst in my kitchen cabinet in my apartment. And I had my parents come over for a visit. And the first thing my mother said when she saw my dinnerware in the cabinet, she's like, that dinnerware is heavy. Isn't that going to pull the cabinets off the wall? And I said, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. But when they left, I noticed that my kitchen cabinet was literally pulling itself off the wall. This dinnerware is so heavy that I had to take it out of the cabinet. I had to re-secure the kitchen cabinet, but that's kind of a fun dinnerware story from way back when. The first designer dinnerware I ever bought, and I think I had a bug placed in my ear from the goldsmith people, but I really focused on Russell and the work of Russell and Mary Wright. And Ann Kerr had published several great books on his designs. And I had her book, and I literally would just scour through the whole thing. I loved reading about his story as a designer. And I literally wanted to collect everything in that book. And the first set of dinnerware I bought of his was a set of Knowles Esquire Queen Anne's lace. And that's the piece on the to the left in the center. And he made many patterns in that dinnerware line. And so I happened upon a set of grass, which I bought, which is the bottom blue set. And then I found a set of Botanica, which was a pattern printed on a tan base. And I loved collecting that set. I had some friends who collected that pre-internet, and we were all competing to see who could get the first centerpiece server and who could get the first teapot out of the set. The teapot looks like a little genie lamp. And it was a difficult set to collect because a couple times I purchased a centerpiece server and the sellers didn't know how to pack it, and several would arrive. It's a 22-inch long piece. So I had several that arrived broken, which was just heartbreaking because it was fairly rare. And then to have a piece arrive broken was really heartbreaking. Another set I started collecting early on was Highlight, Russell Wright's Highlight. And that was a dinnerware set that he designed with pottery pieces and then what he called snow glass plates and bowls. And that line of dinnerware won a Industrial Design Society of America award in the early 50s. So that was a well-honored dinnerware set. And then, like I said, I had to collect everything that Russell Wright and Mary Wright designed. So I started collecting American Modern, that's on the left, his Sterling dinnerware, which was a restaurant line he did for restaurant use. Parker White Clover, which is in the center, which was kind of near and dear to my heart because my aunt had a set of that, and I remember eating off of that as a kid, and I always loved the shape of that set. And I collected his plasticware. I love collecting anything with boxes or anything related to retail. So there's an example of one of his Idealware butter dishes with the box. I lucked into a set of Cantaloupe Iroquois casual early on at a thrift store. And so I was able to snag what's considered one of the best colors in the Iroquois line. And that's at the bottom is a line of home decorator melamine dinnerware. And of course, I had to collect Mary Wright's designs, and she was famous for designing her country garden set for Bauer. And those are some pieces from that collection. I had collected so much Russell Wright that by 2001, when the Cooper Hewitt mounted an exhibit on Russell and Mary's work, I was invited to lend some pieces to the exhibit. So when we went to the opening of the exhibit that weekend, Annie Wright had also opened her house, Manitoga, to visitors. And so she was still living at Manitoga at the time. That's a photo on the left that I had taken in 2001 when Annie was still living in the house. And I just loved the fact that I was able to see where Russell Wright lived and where he designed. And so it just added to the depth of my passion for collecting Russell Wright dinnerware. And there's a recent picture of me and Annie. There was a collector's event in December that they had at Manitoga. And the picture on the far right is my friends Mark and Roger and Sarah, who works at Manitoga. Another designer who I really love her work is Eva Zeisel. And this set I'm showing here was, I didn't know, this is pre-internet again. I didn't know anything about Eva Zeisel, but I found this set of dinnerware at a thrift store. I found all those pieces for $4. And I thought it just looked amazing. First of all, I couldn't believe it was $4, which was inexpensive even back then, but it had an amazing glaze and just wonderful shapes. And I knew it had to be something special. And with a couple days of research, I found out that it was Eva Zeisel's design for Red Wing, her town and country line. And the more I found out about Eva Zeisel, I saw that she had been designing since the late 1920s. She was still alive. She was still designing. I mean, I think she was in her 90s when I found that set. And so I was I was thrilled that she had lived in Chicago for a while too. Her husband had taught at the University of Chicago, so she lived in Chicago for a while. So I really became excited about collecting Town and Country. And within a year, I had collected everything in Town and Country except one of the salad spoons. And it took me 25 years to find my missing salad spoon. A couple times I had the opportunity to buy one for $1,500, but I refused to do that. But it was kind of ironic that it took me 1 year to collect almost everything and then another 25 years to fill up my set. But Town and Country was a wonderful set. It was a commission. Red Wing wanted her to design something Greenwich Village-y. So all the pieces have a real twist to them. That's the covered soup tureen in the center, and there's a relish set on the left that's wonderful with a wooden tray. And then I had a friend who lived in New York, and he actually knew Eva. He had met her at a flea market or something. And so Scott arranged a vacation to New York where we had the honor of meeting Eva for the first time. And she had a space that her son had given her in his Manhattan office. And it was a little storage room. And here we are. This is the conference room in the office. And so she showed us some things. She showed us a trash compactor she was working on and a few other things she was working on. But then she said, I have to pack up this pottery and put it away before the end of the day. So can you two boys help me do that? And so Eva liked to put people to work. So there I am helping her pack up her Zolnay pottery that she had out. And my reward, besides meeting Eva, which was big enough reward as it was, my other reward was she gave me a Town and Country mustard at the end of the day. And there's a photo on the right that many years later, I was one of the writers on a book about Eva Zeisel's life's work. And so I interviewed her many times. And during one of my trips to New York to interview Eva, she invited Scott and I to her house to have tea. And she served us on her Tomorrow's Classic tea set, which was a wonderful experience. One of my favorite designs of hers was for Monmouth. It's called Fine Stoneware. And I love it, and she loved it too, because it combined her love of contemporary dinnerware, which modernism, and her love of folk art. So it was a huge line of dinnerware. It was 54 pieces, and many of the pieces had a bird theme. So you see, like on the right, those are bird-shaped teapots. There's a bird vegetable bowl in the center. And there were 15 patterns in the line. It was a huge line. And she was the distributor. She actually owned the molds for the line. So she really had her heart and soul in this dinnerware. Unfortunately, even though it was successful, they had gotten a lot of orders from department stores for the line. The workers went on strike several months into production. And when the workers were on strike, the kiln that was used to make this dinnerware burned. And so when the factory reopened, they could not make her fine stoneware anymore. So she was still committed to the line. So several years later, she contracted a company, Hollydale, in California, and she restored the line. She reissued it with new glazes, but similar shapes. And unfortunately, that company went out of business not too soon after it started production the second time. Well, she tried a third time in the 60s. She contracted Schmid, who is a dinnerware distributor, and they had a factory in Japan that did the line. She reformulated it. She didn't use the same molds, but it was similar shapes, and it was called Schmid Ironstone. Unfortunately, this time, public interest in large dinnerware sets was kind of on the wane, and the line just didn't succeed. So 3 times she tried on this line, but it was one of her favorites. When I been to Eva's house, that was the dinnerware that she used all the time, and her daughter still uses this dinnerware. So it was a real favorite with Eva. Some other things I collect, I said she started designing in the late 20s. She designed for Schramberg in Germany. That's a teacup. I have coffee in it, but coffee cup and saucer on the far left. On the far right, she does her first dinnerware line she designed when she came to the United States. She originally lived in Europe, and she fled here during the unrest in Europe during the 30s. So she came here. Her first dinnerware line was for Sears, and it was a line called Stratoware. And she was teaching at Pratt Institute in New York at the time, and she had given her students an assignment to design a pitcher without a handle. And so one of her students designed the picture I'm showing there, and that influenced the rest of the line for Sears. Another line I love is on the left of center. That's her Riverside china. And you just notice that the carafe and the tumbler and all three pieces have this rounded bottom. Well, that allows the pieces to rock back and forth. So not only were these pieces elegant and beautiful, but they also had an element of fun. And that's what I loved about Eva. She always put something to kind of make you happy and have fun with her pieces. The piece in the center is a child set she designed called We Modern, and that was made by Goss China in New Jersey. Some other pieces that I collect from, or I should say every piece you see in this presentation, there's a dinnerware set that's included. I collect dinnerware sets, either 4 place settings, 6 place settings, 8, 12, 16, and then all the serving pieces. So when you see one piece, I probably have the full collection. So the pieces on the far left, the 2 on the top, that's Eva Zeisel's Hallcraft Century, and the boxes from her Tomorrow's Classic line. And a friend had given me that box. And again, I love collecting things that relate to the retail side of dinnerware. So I love having the boxes and the things that were used to sell the dinnerware. The picture on the bottom left is from her Hall kitchenware line, and the pattern's called Tritone. Eva did not design a lot of patterns, but she often, when she designed dinnerware, she would suggest the patterns, and that was a pattern she suggested to Hall that she thought would work. And of course, it's a classic 50s pattern with pink and turquoise, and it just suits the pieces perfectly. The dinnerware on the right was the last dinnerware line that Eva designed before she retired for the first time. She retired in 1964, and then she came back out of retirement, I think 1984, when an exhibit was mounted about her work in Canada. So the line here is from 64, and she designed this for Highland. It's called High Fashion. And you can see these beautiful mottled glazes, and the serving pieces are just, curvaceous and huge. The piece on the right is a wine carafe that is 20 inches tall, and it's just, I call it an I Dream of Genie bottle, but it's got this beautiful undulating curvaceous shape, and it's just a wonderful piece. And these are my cabinets in my dining room. I like to say that I have pieces from Eva that date from 1929 until 2012 when she passed away. So she just had an incredible body of work, and she had a long life, and she was super productive. And it's just as exciting as a designer to see another designer that was so productive and passionate about her work. So this is my Eva Zeisel cabinet collection. Another designer who I really love his work is Charles Murphy. And when I was assembling my dinnerware book collection, one of my key books was the book called Red Wing Dinnerware by Stanley Bougie and David Newkirk. And that book was published in 1980. And it was really just an overview of all the dinnerware that Red Wing had produced in its history. And one of my favorite pieces in the book was a line called Kermis, which is what I'm showing here. And Kermis was advertised as a party set. It was made in 1957. It was designed by Charles Murphy, but really fun scallop-shaped plates. And there's a court jester that playfully, skips on in a different style on each plate, and a really unique beverage server and cups and saucers that are really cool. But it's a hard to find set, and it was a thrill when I found my first piece of Kermis. I felt like it was a real victory. I will say I've been collecting Kermis for 30 plus years, And I still have not found the elusive nut bowls. A couple people out there will probably know what I'm talking about, but I would love to find the nut bowls, which I'm missing to this set. Some other pieces he designed for Red Wing. The piece on the left is from his casual dinnerware line. He designed that in 1955 for Red Wing. And that's in the Hearthside pattern that was introduced in 1961. The two pieces on the right are from his Red Wing Futura line. And you could just see Charles Murphy was a master sculptor. I mean, the floating handles and the curvaceous shape of that coffee pot are just amazing. And then for a time in the early 50s, he left Red Wing and he worked for Stetson, which was a dinnerware company in Illinois, and he worked there for several years. And so the piece in front of the brick wall is a piece from his Stetson Rio line. But you can still see this company made lower quality pottery, but you could still see just the amazing shape of that coffee pot. And what's interesting about Stetson and Red Wing is they both produced hand-painted dinnerware, which was very labor-intensive. So Stetson, especially because they marketed lower-priced dinnerware, their hand-painted designs were a little simpler than Red Wing's. Another designer, I absolutely love her work, although she didn't do as much dinnerware design, was Belle Kogan. And again, it was very unusual to be a female product designer in the 30s and 40s. But like Eva, she made a big success of being a product designer. One of the dinnerware lines I most love of hers is she did for Red Wing called Fancy Free. And this is her desert pattern. And again, I love fun, quirky patterns. And just, the minute I saw this pattern, I wanted to collect it. And very hard to find. It chipped very easily. So each piece is kind of a treasure when you find it. And I have a four place settings in the box, which was a fun find. She also did plastic dinnerware for Boutonware, and her line that she designed for them was called Belle Bouton. I don't own that piece. I just showed that as an example, another example of her work. That's a drawing from the Cooper Hewitt that she donated. Two other designers whose work I absolutely adore are Frank Irwin and Robert Allen. They worked for Metlocks, and in 1954 they designed the Freeform dinnerware line for Metlocks. And Frank Irwin designed the shapes, and Robert Allen designed the patterns. And together, probably just some of the most incredible mid-century modern dinnerware designs you'll find. The shapes are amazing, just free form and totally unexpected. And the patterns too, just perfectly complement the shapes. So these are two patterns, and interesting, one pattern's called Freeform, the kind of the Calder-like pattern, and the other pattern's called Aztec. And again, I have 4 place settings in the box. Whenever I can find dinnerware that's still new in the box, I buy it and add it to my collection. Some other designers that are important to dinnerware design and to my collection are the Shrengast Brothers. There were 3 brothers, and they were all ceramic artists. Probably the most famous of the 3 was Victor Schreckengaus. He worked for American Limoges. That's the Art Deco casserole on the far left. And he also worked for Salem. The 2 bottom pieces on the right are from his Salem line. He also did a line for Salem called Freeform. That was a popular dinnerware name in the 50s. And kind of the unique feature of Freeform was he had little feet at the bottom of the cups and some of the serving pieces to lift them off the ground. He also did a really popular pattern called Christmas Eve for Salem. And Salem used that pattern from the early 50s until they went out of business in the 1980s. It was just a super popular pattern. Brother Don Schreckengaus, he worked for Salem also for a while, and he designed Tricorn, which is the dinnerware on the bottom left. And that color is called Mandarin. And interestingly enough, that dinnerware was selected to be used as the official Enterprise dinnerware on the television show Star Trek. Don also worked for Homer Laughlin. The pink coffee pot is from his Epicure line that he designed. And the cowboy pattern dinnerware above it is a pattern he designed in the early 50s for Homer Laughlin. And I think my favorite design from the Shrengast Brothers is the punch set you see. I happened to find that punch set at a Chicago antique store years ago, and it was unmarked. And I really didn't know what it was when I bought it, but I figured I had spent money on sillier things in the past, and I really loved it. And then it turned out that it was a punch set designed by Paul for the gem clay forming company in the 1930s. And for several years in the 30s, they had him design a spectacular piece that they would give to their best customers as a holiday gift. And so they were made in very limited numbers. They only made 66 of these punch sets. And in a weak moment, I sold my set through Sotheby's. So all I have left is that photo, but I have fond memories of owning that set and finding it. Another designer who I love his work is Frederick Hurton Reed. And he was the design director for Homer Laughlin from 1927 until his early death in the early 1940s. And he designed the Riviera dinnerware I showed you, my first set of dinnerware that I bought. And I also started collecting his Wells Art glaze, which he designed in the early 1930s. I think he designed it in 1930, actually. And it was kind of a reaction to the colored dinnerware that was coming out. And he didn't want to copy it, but the colors were more on the pastel range. But he just did he had a talent for designing just wonderful details into the pottery that really just, when the glaze was put on, just stood out. So in his Wells Art glaze, there's that wonderful wing detail for the handles that you see the detail of. I also collect a pattern that he designed called Deco Leaf, and that's the red and black pattern on that canister next to the Wells Art glaze. And that was designed to go along with his Fiesta ware, which he designed in 1936. And I really don't collect Fiesta ware. I mean, it is his most famous design. I collect the red Fiesta ware so it can go with the Deco Leaf. And I do have some other pieces of Fiesta. I have the nesting bowl set that I'm showing there. But not a lot of depth in Fiesta. There's bigger Fiesta collectors than I am. He also designed a really popular dinnerware line called Nautilus, and that's the piece in the bottom center. And there was a shell motif. You see little shells for the feet. He didn't design that pattern. That pattern was designed by Don Schreckengaust. I also collect a lot of other dinnerware besides what I've shown, and I've just categorized these by just the regions they were made. So some of my favorite California dinnerware companies are Catalina Island. That's the swordfish chop plate on the far left. I believe that's a 14-inch piece, but Catalina Island was a pottery company that was opened by the Wrigleys and operated on the island for quite a while. The piece on the bottom left is from Pacific Pottery, and they made a line of colored dinnerware starting in the early 30s, so way before Fiesta, and it was called Hostessware. It's a huge line of dinnerware, over 200 pieces in the line, and I'm still collecting that. If I find a piece of Pacific Hostessware, I always buy it. I generally only buy that color. That's their Apache red color, but it's really a beautiful line of dinnerware. I collect pieces from Metlocks. That's that cup and saucer. You notice the lemon for scale. That's their colossal cup and saucer set. And it was designed kind of as a novelty piece for their plaid dinnerware lines. And you could use it as a punch bowl or for chips or putting plants in it or whatever. Also, Vernon Kilns is one of my favorite dinnerware companies. And Gail Turnbull was their design director for many years. He designed the vegetable set, which was all hand painted. And it's a big chop plate with salad plates. The piece in the upper right corner is by May and Vive Hamilton. They were two sisters that Vernon Kilns hired in the mid 30s, and they designed wonderful art pottery and several dinnerware lines for Vernon Kilns. And that piece is called a hors d'oeuvre tray, which is just a huge piece. It's 16 inches wide. And then another line I absolutely love is the bottom center is a piece of Vodna of California. And that was a company that was formed in the mid-40s by a husband and wife team. They wanted something, they wanted a new career after World War II, and they started Vodna. And they designed some really wonderful dinnerware and continued in business into the late 60s. In the 60s, they became famous for their mugs that they designed. But we're going to have a IMODD presentation this fall with the daughter of the founders of Vodna, and that's something to look forward to this fall when we'll talk about that dinnerware company. Some other pieces from California. I collect, again, Vernon Kilns hired designers and artists in the 30s to do a lot of their dinnerware. So they hired Rockwell Kent, a famous painter and author, and he designed a line of dinnerware called Salamina, among other. He had 3 lines that he did for them, but I collect Salamina, so that's a huge chop plate. Top right is a line called Porthole, which was designed by Gail Turnbull. The bird piece is from George James. Again, he designed the Starburst line. That's a piece from Franciscan's Contours line, which are super elegant, high-styled serving pieces. That was a bird serving bowl. And then the pitcher and tumblers are one of Franciscan's answer to the colored dinnerware craze in the 30s. That's from their El Patio collection, and I have a large set of that. I collect a lot of pottery from the Ohio River region. The stacking and nesting bowls on the left are from Universal. That's from their Ballerina Mist line. The cookie jar was made by Salem. That's a pattern called El Dorado that was made for Sears. Russell Wright's Harker pottery was from East Liverpool, Ohio. And again, there's the one piece has salesman's information on the back. So I love collecting anything having to do with selling of dinnerware. The Mexican plate on the right is from Cronin Pottery. They were in Minerva, Ohio. More Ohio area potteries, Hall. That's a dripple-later coffee pot with an unusual cactus pattern on it. And Russell Wright's Payton highlight dinnerware and snow glass was made in West Virginia. That's so Payton City was in West Virginia. And the teapot is Homer Laughlin, and they were in East Liverpool, Ohio. And the plate with the palm trees and camels, that's by W.S. George. That's from their Bolero Oasis dinnerware line, and I have a set of that. And the leaf plates on the far right are by Steubenville. Steubenville's most famous for making Russell Wright's American Modern pottery. And that's a line of, they called Woodfield dinnerware. They use the same glazes that Russell Wright used on American Modern. I love Art Deco and 1930s dinnerware, and some of the key style points of Art Deco are bright colors and repeating lines and radiating shapes. And so I've already shown you some of these things. The top left is Tricorn and Streamline by Salem. I already mentioned that Don Schreckengaus designed Tricorn, but Vincent Broomhall and Herbert Smith designed the coffee pot and the teacups and the other pieces that went with the line, and they combined those two with the Mandarin glaze. The bottom left piece is a Shawnee Valencia relish dish, and that was Shawnee's answer to Fiesta and the popular colored dinnerware craze that was going on in the 30s. I love all the Spanish themed dinnerware that was out there in the 30s, and so I have a large set of Mexicana. That's a pie plate from Homer Laughlin's Kitchen Craft line, and this one's never been used, still has the label on it. And the piece on the far right is a Steubenville piece with this amazing Art Deco design, and just a perfectly great example of Art Deco. More Art Deco pieces. The plates on the left, that's a stack of restaurant plates that I found. They were made in Chicago for an anonymous restaurant, but it's just got a wonderful Art Deco design on it. The casserole with the Art Deco chrome holder is a Fraunfelter piece. The fish platter is Pacific Hostess ware. And there's another example of Homer Laughlin's Deco leaf. Mid-century modern dinnerware is just something I love. And the most classic examples of mid-century modern dinnerware are clean lined, organic shapes, muted colors. If there's patterns used on the piece, they're usually abstract and very austere. Of course, things go more wild, and we'll go into that in a few more slides. But these are some really great examples of mid-century modern dinnerware that I collect. Is the two pieces on the pieces on the left and the teapot. Those are from Eva Zeisel's Hallcraft Century line. The pieces on the left were a line of bowls and platters that all nest together. The bottom right coffee pot was from Russell Wright's last dinnerware line that he designed in 1964. Was made in Japan. Was called the line was called Theme Formal and Theme Informal, and that's the coffee pot from the formal part of the line. And with the idea that if you bought both sets of dinnerware, you never needed any other dinnerware. You had a casual line and a formal line. It did not succeed. Customers didn't buy into it, so not much was made. Top right is bowls from his Highlight, Paden City Highlight line, and you just see the beautiful simple shapes and the muted colors. And even the piece in the bottom center, that's designed by Russell Wright. That's actually a piece from the 1930s. And it does have an Art Deco look, but it's also a transitional piece into mid-century modern. A lot of Art Deco designs were simple lined and clean and classic too. So a lot of pieces morph into one another. More mid-century modern dinnerware. The rendering on the left is from Jean Gorbet. I was fortunate to buy her many pieces from her estate years ago when she passed away. Jean Gorbet and her husband, Larry Bowman, started the Gorbet Bowman Dinnerware Company, Gorbet Bowman Pottery Company in Topeka, Kansas in the 1940s. And they made a line of dinnerware called Aero Modern. And this is Jean's sketch for the TV plate that she designed. And it's a really wonderful set. It's hard to find, but occasionally pieces turn up in the Midwest. The melamine dinnerware is Branchell Color Flight, designed by Kay Lemoyne. And I show that picture because I also love collecting textiles that match my dinnerware. And it's just fun to see all those colors from the 50s and 60s show up in textiles also. So I love pairing the vintage textiles that I've collected with the dinnerware. The bottom centerpiece is, I don't have the name committed to memory, but it's a snack set, enamel on copper that was awarded a Good Design Award by the Museum of Modern Art. And there's a sticker on the bowl that shows that it won that award. And that was a competition that MoMA ran in the 50s to honor great design. And the piece on the far right is by Paden City, and it's their preview dinnerware. And the pattern was designed by Anton Refriger, and he was a RISD graduate, and he did some wonderful art and patterns in the 50s and 60s. I also love collecting dinnerware from Chicago, since I'm from Chicago. And some of my favorite pottery, it was designed by Hull House Kilns. And Hull House was a settlement on the south side of Chicago that helped mainly Mexican immigrants assimilate into Chicago. And they had a pottery program where they made dinnerware and art pottery. And they had a gift shop on Michigan Avenue where they would sell the pottery in the 1930s. So a ceramic artist, Myrtle Merritt French, she started the pottery program in 1927. And she worked with Vin Hannell and Hazel Hannell, and they started this program. And that teapot is from 1927. And there's evidence to support the fact that the work from Hull House kilns really influenced the color dinnerware movement in the 1930s. This piece predates anything from Bauer or Pacific from California. The piece on the far upper left is after the Hanels left Hull House Kilns, they started their own pottery company in a town near the Indiana Dunes, which is just right outside of Chicago. And for 20, 30 years, they made really elegant dinnerware and artware pottery pieces. And that's an example of one of their dinnerware pieces with that wonderful pretzel twisted handle on the cup. The Green Mill pottery is actually from a jazz club that's right around the corner. Its history goes back to the early 1900s. It started out as a beer garden and then morphed into a jazz club where they served food. And it's still open today. So I love collecting dinnerware from places like that in Chicago. The Triangle Bowl is from a restaurant chain in Chicago in the 1930s that sold sugar-cured ham. I'm also lucky to live in Chicago because the Higgins Glass Studio is in Riverside. And Michael and Frances Higgins opened their glass studio in 1948, I believe. And they're still in business today. Michael and Frances are long gone, but Jonathan and Louise Wimmer took over the business and still make many of the pieces that Michael and Frances made, as well as many of their own. So all the colored pieces you see here are Higgins glass. And the daisy piece is a huge relish piece. It's maybe 18 inches in diameter. And those are little serving bowls. And the flowered piece is a plate that I like to use underneath other plates. The piece in the top center is by Dorothy Thorpe. She did a lot of etched glass and sandblasted glass designs. She did not design the glassware itself. She purchased leaded glassware and then she would etch her own designs on that. So I have a lot of that because a lot of it is really very Art Deco oriented. Piece on the bottom right is Heisey New Era, and that's Art Deco. I love restaurant dinnerware. Just quickly go through this. The piece on the far left is from the Milwaukee Road railroad line. That's their traveler dinnerware. I have a huge collection of donut shop mugs. The Peter Pan piece is from a Chicago restaurant chain from the 1950s. I even collect paper dinnerware. So the Dunkin' Donuts cup is, I have cups from different donut chains and such. I don't use them. I actually photoshopped that coffee into that cup. So no paper cups were harmed in the making of that photo. And then of course, Russell Wright designed a huge line of restaurant dinnerware for Sterling. And he also designed the bottom center is a couple of pieces that were made by Sterling, but that were designed for the Shunli Chinese restaurant in New York City. And that's a great set, really fun patterns on each piece. And the top right is a cup and saucer. I don't think Russell Wright designed that pattern, but the pattern is called Carnation. And that was designed for the Carnation restaurant that was at Disneyland. But they used Russell Wright dinnerware for that set. I collect holiday dinnerware. Some of my favorite holiday dinnerware is the piece on the left that's by Sasha Brostoff, and I have a set of that, and it's got this wonderful mid-century modern abstract Christmas tree design on it, and the bowl is all free-form with a ruffled edge. I love kitsch holiday dinnerware and a serving pieces. The piece in the center is a Holt Howard Starry-Eyed Santa piece. I have a huge set of that. And then the pieces on the right are both designed, the patterns and the dinnerware in this case were both designed by Victor Schreckengaus. That's his Christmas Eve pattern. And the bowl on the top right is his freeform dinnerware line that I mentioned earlier. I collect Western themed dinnerware. Wallace made a line called Westward Ho with patterns designed by Western artist Till Gooden. And wonderful dinnerware, super heavy duty, was really designed as a barbecue set. And so it's got these wonderful cowboy themed patterns on them. And they made tons of accessories. There's tablecloths and paper napkins and paper tablecloths and ashtrays and matchbook covers and all sorts of things, glassware that go with that set. So it's really a fun set to collect. The piece in the center is designed by Don Schreckengaust. That's on a Nautilus plate, and he designed that pattern in the early 50s for Homer Laughlin. And the piece on the far right is Stangl Ranger dinnerware, which is very hard to find and all hand painted, and really just a wonderful abstract take on cowboy dinnerware. I love kitsch dinnerware, whimsical dinnerware. The piece on the far left is a rendering that I got from Jean Gorbett's estate. And this is her rendering for a line of butterfly dinnerware. I don't know the official name for this dinnerware, but it has a wonderful sgraffito butterfly detail on the pieces. And then the colors were hand painted. And it's also got this amazing little ruffled scalloped detail on the bottom of the serving pieces, which you can see there. The mug is by Vernon Kilns. It's got a really cute airbrush terrier on it. And the platter is a kitsch take on Americana by Charles Murphy. That's his Hearthside pattern for Red Wing in 1961. The plate on the left is Universal Vogue. And Scott bought me a set of that dinnerware for one of our anniversaries, and I love it. But what's fun about this set is I forget how many different patterns they had in the line, but they were all based on popular songs of the time. So this one is Red Sails in the Sunset. And you see the little musical notes in the bottom of the plate. And it's just really a cute set. I also mentioned I collect Holt Howard. The salt and pepper shakers in the center are kind of related to their Pixie line of dinnerware, but those are called rock and roll shakers. There's some Pixieware in the bottom right. The top right is Momar, Charles Murphy's Futura dinnerware line again. And what's really cute about that, it's got these charming little French cafe scenes on each piece. And then there's a monkey and organ grinder that are carefully placed, strategically placed on each piece. One of my favorite salt and pepper shakers, and I don't collect a lot of salt and pepper shakers, but I love this set that was made in 1957 to commemorate the Long Count fight from 1927 by Gene Tunney and Jack Dempsey. And I just love, usually most salt and pepper shakers from the 50s are either cutesy or feminine or childish. And I love the fact that these are kind of a masculine take on salt and peppers. And if you collect dinnerware, you have to collect glassware and flatware and tablecloths if you're going to set a proper table. So I have the flatware in on the right is from Russell Wright. That's his Threads line by Hall. There's some Russell Wright glassware in the center and on the right. There's some glassware that matches Wallace Rodeo. Dorothy Thorpe glassware is on the left. Eva Zeisel glassware is on the left. And I have a huge set of Oneida Twin Star flatware that I use. And I like that flatware because it goes with a lot of different things that I have from the 50s. And I love entertaining. So I have to have things for relish and appetizers and cocktails. So I have a lot of pieces that will help me serve appetizers to guests. The pieces on the left are designed by Russell Wright. Those were his Kleiss Oceana line. The piece on the far left was honored with the Museum of Modern Art's Best Object of the Year award in 1941, and they featured that piece on their cover. That's his centerpiece silver. The piece in the center is Eva Zeisel's relish from her Schmid Ironstone line. The chrome piece is Chase. That's a little cocktail cup and a little snack tray that you could carry around at a party. And the other three pieces are all by Russell Wright. The large piece with the radiating lines, that's a warming tray he designed for Appleman called Electric Glass. And they actually work. I've used that at parties. It's really amazing. And I love cocktails. So I have lots of cocktail shakers, and I consider them dinnerware too. So the three pieces on the right are, two of the pieces are from Russell Wright's spun aluminum collection, the cocktails set and the spun aluminum set. It might be hidden, but there's his Tantalus decanter set, which he designed in the 1930s. The center set is by Red Wing. That's from their Chevron dinnerware set from the 1930s. And I love the fact it's got that little rooster, that cock on the for the handles of the cocktail container and the cups. The cocktail pitcher is an anonymous piece from a Laguna Beach potter, and the glass shakers are all based on Eva Zeisel's prestige glassware line. So there's a couple of containers that had liquor flavored candy, and then there's the shaker for two on the far left. Since I love the design process, I also love the process of making dinnerware, and I try to collect things that relate to that. So there's a stamper for Russell Wright's Sterling dinnerware, a mold for Eva Zeisel's Town and Country. My friend Randy gave me that wonderful photo of Russell Wright sculpting the pitcher for Snow Glass and the prototype for his pinch glassware, and those are the pieces I have in my collection. And the center top piece is a teapot that one of my bosses from Goldsmith designed when he took classes with Eva Zeisel in the 1950s at Pratt, and he designed that teapot. And as he told me, that was one of his best designs. He loved the experience of taking classes with Eva, and he had that teapot until he passed away. I love collecting prototypes. Speaking of prototypes, so these are some prototypes in my collection. The plate on the far left is Russell Wright American Modern, pattern that he was looking at. The pink piece is from, he redesigned his casual line for Iroquois and did this pattern called Nasturtium. And that's a prototype gravy boat that was never produced. The teapot is an early prototype for Eva's Castleton dinnerware line, her museum dinnerware collection, and she was looking at a wooden handle. So that's an example of that. The green pieces are prototype plates from Mary Wright's Country Garden dinnerware collection. And I'm not sure if you can see it, but the top right is a prototype pattern from Eva Zeisel's Monmouth dinnerware line. I also love anything related to retail, so I have lots of point of purchase displays, and the piece on the bottom left is a door-to-door salesman's kit for Russell Wright's home decorator melamine dinnerware line. And where do I keep it all? So we live in a huge apartment. There's lots of built-in cabinets in the dining room and living room, and there's window seats. And our kitchen actually has two pantries. So I keep a lot of dinnerware in both pantries. I also have a room that was originally a maid's room right off the kitchen, and I've turned that into a vintage kitchen space, and the closet is filled with boxes of vintage dinnerware. And the picture in the bottom center is a couple years ago, we got a new refrigerator. So I had to take all of my dinnerware out of one of the pantries. And that's all the dinnerware from the pantry laid out in the living room while we were redoing the pantry. So you can just see what happens when you actually organize your dinnerware. And you have to use it. I mean, if you collect dinnerware, that's part of the fun, is using your dinnerware. So whenever we have guests, I try to use a new set of dinnerware. When we're not using Starburst, I pull out other pieces from my collection. That's why I like to have them all out and handy. And there I am showing just how Eva's Riverside China works, the rocking bowls and tumblers, which is really fun. And I love to share my passion. So I mentioned that I helped work on a book about Eva Zeisel's life called Life, Design, and Beauty. And that was published over 10 years ago, but that goes through Eva's life and all the pieces that she designed. I also worked for many years on a newsletter called Eva Zeisel Forum newsletter. And we worked with Jeannie, Eva's daughter, and her grandson, Adam. And we published that for 7 or 8 years. I love sharing my collection. If I can lend pieces to museums, I do that. I also volunteer my time at the International Museum of Dinnerware Design, hence this presentation tonight. And lately, I've also been doing some volunteer work through Manitoba. So I'm really happy to do that. You can also find a lot of my passion on Facebook. I have 4 Facebook groups that I actually am the administrator of, and many other groups that I participate on. But here are some of the links to those groups. And during the pandemic, I felt like I came full circle from my grandmother's coffee clutch, but I decided to document my dinnerware collections through taking pictures with coffee cups and coordinating textiles. So every day for 3 or 4 months, I posted a new photo of a coffee cup, and each coffee cup represents a whole dinnerware set. This is, I don't, some people were like, do you just collect coffee cups? And no, each cup is part of a set. And I think I was up to 87 when I stopped. The only thing that stopped me is some of my dinnerware is packed away in a closet that's really hard to get to. So I still have several sets that I haven't photographed, but this gives you an example of some of the coffee cups that I photographed during the pandemic. The worst thing about collecting dinnerware, sometimes it breaks. And I borrowed this photo from Mark LeCain. I thought it was a perfect story about how the heartbreak of dinnerware is sometimes you buy something online and it arrives broken because it wasn't packed right. Sometimes you use it and it gets broken. I remember one time I had a dinner party, and after I was done cleaning everything, I had some things on the floor and I literally drop kicked a piece of Pacific Hostessware across the room and it shattered against the door. So that's the worst thing. The best thing about the hobby is all the people that I've met along the way and all the friends I've made. And it's just a huge group of passionate collectors. And it's just been a wonderful 35 years plus of meeting people and having friends all across the United States. And that's it. I thank you for allowing me to show you my collection. And I go by the name Atomic Scott online. So if you see that logo and my name, that's me.
Okay, so we do have a couple of questions that have come in.
Great.
Yeah, thank you very much, Scott. Oh, by the way, before the questions, I have to tell you, I literally died. First, I came alive when you showed Paul Shrengast punch bowl and cups.
Yes.
And then when you said you sold it, I died.
Could I complete the story?
No.
I had that in the dining room floor for years. And then in a weak moment, I decided to sell it. And I mean, it sold for a lot of money. And when it's sold for the money it's sold for, Scott then says, oh, I didn't know that was a good piece. I would have been a lot more careful around it if I had known it was worth, you know.
Oh, that was gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
I just found that in an antique store. I paid $90 for that set.
Oh.
That was one of those, yay,
Yeah.
yay kind of days.
Well, I loved your tour. Here's some questions.
Okay, I'm ready.
One question is, where were the factories located, like Red Wing and the others? Are any still around, only making other more contemporary patterns for dinnerware?
Well, Homer Laughlin's still around. Red Wing unfortunately closed during a strike in 1967, and they were located in Minnesota, Red Wing, Minnesota. That's actually one of my favorite dinnerware companies. It's really sad that they closed. Unfortunately, most US dinnerware companies closed because of competition from imports from Japan. You know, the government allowed imports to flow into the United States without any tariffs in the 50s to kind of bolster them up after World War II. And it really decimated the US pottery industry. They just couldn't compete on price. So that's why you see, I limit my collection generally to US made pottery and dinnerware. I make the exceptions for Russell, Wright, and Eva because some of their last pieces were made in Japan. But most dinnerware production, you know, ended up in Japan and now is in China. But there's still a few holdouts. There's Hall and Homer Laughlin, and Margaret, you probably know more than me.
Well, Hall doesn't exist anymore. Hall
Yeah.
got taken over by Homer Laughlin,
Right.
and then Homer Laughlin split off the Fiesta, which is still being made, the new Fiesta.
Right.
And Julie Gaines, who's going to be our speaker in September, can tell us about what happened with all the remaining stock, restaurantware stock that Homer Laughlin owned, which you can now buy at Fish's Eddy in New York City. So there's really nobody, there's Fine China, there's Picard is still doing US government things, but
Heath is still making china, right? Or dinnerware.
who?
Heath,
Oh, Heath, of course, yes, in Sausalito, yes.
right. But yeah, most
Comment.
of it's gone.
You're incredibly informative and deeply committed to these wonderful objects. Thank you for such a rich and educational hour. I cannot even imagine keeping track of all of these. But I gather you have a database holding all these details.
Do you have a database?
Do you want to send someone over and help me with the database?
Is the database in your skull?
You know, years ago, I tried to start documenting I document things with photography. And Margaret, you know, I'm posting every day dinnerware photos, but years ago, I started doing tried to document everything in a log, and it was overwhelming. So no, unfortunately, I don't have a written documentation of my collection. Some people do. I'm just not one of those people. So,
Well, we have
and I hear Scott laughing in the other room.
I say this one. We have a thing in the chat from Julie Gaines at Fish's Eddy, and she says Homer closed. Wah! They only make Fiesta, no more food service as of 3 months ago. So like I said, if you want Homer Laughlin, go to Fish's Eddy in New York City and get your Homer Laughlin.
And Homer was bought by Steelite.
The sad reality is pottery.
Steelite is one of the most common you see.
Dinnerware is labor intensive, and you know, China and other countries are just better suited to labor intensive products. So it's just a miracle that Homer Laughlin and Hall lasted so long, to be honest. But you know, the U.S. doesn't support labor-intensive industries.
So another question: do you have a holy grail in your collection?
Well, I sold one of my holy grails, that punch set that Margaret lamented me selling. I'd say some of my holy grails are the Mary Wright hinged casserole that I showed. That's a really hard piece to find in perfect condition. I don't know. I have, you know, they're like children. I love everything.
Is it a love the one you're with kind of moment?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely, you know, I sell things too, but I'm always somebody years ago said, if Scott Vermillion's selling it, he must have a duplicate or it must be damaged. And that kind of sometimes sums up what I sell. Occasionally I have a weak moment and I sell something like that punch set, but I generally keep everything I buy, and it makes it very difficult to keep track of everything. But there's collectors out there that have way more than me, I'll tell you that.
Rolf raised his hand, and I don't see how I can allow him to ask a question. So I think we need to.
Oh, I just wanted to congratulate Scott on a fabulous presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Learned an enormous amount about American ceramics. I do a little bit, but
I tried to cram as much as I could into.
It's phenomenal what you put together, and that I like the dating too. That you always include the dates, and there are so many Central European, Czech, and German pieces that relate. Maybe a decade, 15 years earlier than some of the American pieces.
Oh,
the
sure.
Mid-Century has some forerunners, and Eva was one of the great transition people that made that possible.
Right.
But so were a couple of other people that came from Germany or from Austria to the United States in the late 30s, 40s, and then and it was remarkable. I learned a lot. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
More questions?
So another question: do you still look for pieces in thrift stores, antique shops, and so on?
I definitely still look for pieces. You know, at this point, what really turns me on are prototypes. Those are the things I really look for. Of course, those are super difficult to find. But yeah, there's still, you know, I mentioned Pacific Hostess ware. I mean, there were over 200 pieces in that line. There's no way anyone out there has a complete collection. I could be wrong, but that's a pretty tough set to complete a collection of. And yeah, I mentioned the Kermis, the nut cups. They call them nut cups, but they're really bowls. I just never found them. I have some friends out there who maybe are online that they have a couple of those pieces. But yes, there's definitely pieces I still look for.
Scott, do you collect any of the Duratone, the Pacific Pottery Duratone or Dura Rim?
I've had some pieces, but I've sold them. I decided just to concentrate on hostessware, and I'm one of those collectors. A lot of collectors collect. Oh, I've got to have the American Modern pitcher in every color. I don't do that. I want a complete set of dinnerware, and I try to pick the best glaze color, like an American Modern. I collect white and glacier blue, and I try to get every piece in that, but I don't have all the pictures in every color. Same with, like Town and Country, I do mix it up. That's a mix set, but I try to stay within a glaze range. Otherwise, the way I collect, I'm so interested in so many things. If I tried to collect every glaze and every pattern, I mean, I'd have to rent an airplane hangar to hold it all. And I don't have that kind of money, especially today. The rare stuff is really expensive to buy if you don't look out and find it. I still find pieces, Margaret. I had that piece of Albert stoneware that I just found, and that was.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, Diane has a question.
Hi, Diane.
I think Diane.
Donnie, you're
muted.
muted. You need to unmute yourself. Or the host needs to unmute you.
I sent a message, but I could only find a way to send it to Scott.
Oh,
So if you could have only one dinnerware line on your desert island, what would it be?
even though I'm probably totally bored with it at this point, I'd have to say Franciscan Starburst. That's a set we use every day, and that's a set that kind of reminds me of Scott and I coming together, and it's our everyday dinnerware set. So if I could only pick one, I would continue using Franciscan Starburst as my everyday dinnerware set. But with that said, there's a lot of, here's my take on Franciscan Starburst. The cereal bowls absolutely suck. You put cereal in it and it sloshes out. So we use the oval vegetable bowls for any serving of cereal or anything. So it's not a perfectly designed set of dinnerware. I mean, there's better designs. Eva was really she was really concerned about the ergonomics, like how you drank out of the cups, and to make sure teapots and coffee pots didn't drip and that type of thing. And so that would be my second choice. I'd probably pick Eva Zeisel's Monmouth dinnerware. That's my second favorite. That said, the Monmouth is pretty fragile. If you use it a lot, it chips easily. So it's kind of a flawed set in that regard. But that's my favorite design, with the birds and all the patterns she designed for it.
So, Scott, what is the most fragile dinnerware you have?
I would say Eva Zeisel's Riverside China. It's porcelain, but it's thin like potato chips, and it's easily damaged. Although it's supposed to be porcelain, it seems like very fragile porcelain. And I remember when I bought my first pieces of that, I bought 4 place settings from someone, and she actually wrapped the pieces in Kleenex boxes with Kleenex, and every piece arrived shattered. And luckily she had 4 more place settings to sell me or to give me. But it just killed me, because Riverside was only made for a few short months, and for less than a year. And so it's really hard to find and really rare. So any piece that gets broken like that is just, it's just tragic. So I'd say that's the most fragile line I collect. And I've never used it. I've never used that dinnerware for anything. I just look at it.
So I think we're running out of time, or maybe we ran out of time. Oh, so last question here.
Sure.
Someone wants to know what those things are, those shapes on the wall behind you or in your,
Those are all designed by Russell Wright. The two piece on my left, oh, well, my left here, and the other piece, sorry, I'm all mixed up. The two metal pieces are Russell Wright spun aluminum. Those are pieces he designed in the 1930s for his spun aluminum collection. And the coral ceramic piece is from American Modern. And so, you know, I've posted those online. The one piece actually in the bottom, when you look at it from the side, it looks like a Devo hat from the rock group in the 80s. And the other pieces look like hubcaps, but they're really handy designs, and I use them. I mean, you put some olives in the center and crackers around the edge, and they're really handy pieces, and they're just beautiful pieces. I have them hanging up on the wall in my kitchen, and to me, they're artwork. I mean, this is all artwork to me. I love the sculptural quality and the graphic design quality of all these pieces. So, and that's what really attracts me to all these things. It's the design essence of all these things. And that's what attracts me to all this dinnerware. It's pieces of art that you can use. It's great stuff.
well, Scott, I want to thank you very much for sharing your passion with all of us this evening. We've enjoyed it so much, learned a lot. And thank you, everybody. Have a great summer. And you can still send questions into Scott through one of his Facebook pages or something if you want, or through the museum at director@dinnerwaremuseum.org.
I'll tell you what, can I
Otherwise-
interrupt? If you,
Sure.
after this is posted on YouTube, I will check in if you want to ask me questions on YouTube. I'd be happy to answer them on there too. So.
Okay. All right. Otherwise, we'll see you all on September 13th with Julie Gaines and Fish's Eddie. Bye-bye. Have a great summer.
Thank you.